Chapter 1. Rebirth and Return. Catherine slowly opened her eyes, and the dazzling white light was like countless needles, piercing her eyes directly, making her frown slightly. The strong and pungent smell of disinfectant in the hospital instantly penetrated her nasal cavity and filled her entire senses. She subconsciously wanted to sit up, but she seemed to be imprisoned by an invisible force. She felt weak and every muscle was out of control. Her mind was like a mess, with fragments of various memories intertwined in a disorderly manner. She tried hard to piece together a complete picture, but she couldn't do it. "Catherine, are you awake?" A voice that couldn't be more familiar sounded softly in her ears. It was her good friend Claire. Claire was sitting quietly by the bed with a seemingly concerned smile on her face, but if you look closely, you can catch the fleeting panic in her eyes like a meteor. What's going on?" Catherine's throat was dry and her voice was hoarse as if it came from another world. Claire gently reached out and held Catherine's hand, which felt a little cold. "Do you remember? You had a car accident and the doctor said you were in a coma for 3 days. But now it's okay, you finally woke up." In an instant, Catherine's memory burst like a surging tide. She clearly remembered her horrible experience on the luxury cruise ship, the disgusting betrayal of Nate and Claire, and the glass of wine that was secretly drugged and exuded a strange smell. She sat up suddenly, her eyes wide open, full of shock and anger, as if she wanted to burn everything in front of her. "Claire, where is Nate?" Her voice was urgent and sharp, like a beast eager for revenge after being injured. Claire's expression seemed to be frozen in an instant, becoming extremely stiff. She stammered, her tongue seemed to be tied. He's not here." A bone-chilling chill suddenly surged in Catherine's heart, like the cold wind in the cold winter, pouring straight into her internal organs. She knew that she had to calm down, force her brain to work quickly, and think carefully about the current situation. She realized that she was reborn and returned to 3 years ago. This cognition made her heart beat faster, and an indescribable complex emotion surged in her heart, which meant that she had a great opportunity to change her fate against the will of heaven, and she could rewrite the tragic fate script she had once had. "Catherine, don't be too excited." Claire tried to comfort her, her voice was soft but with a subtle tremor. Catherine shook her head decisively. She knew that she must not stay in this seemingly warm but dangerous hospital for too long. She had to race against time and leave here as soon as possible to start the revenge plan that was ready to go. "Claire, help me contact my lawyer." She took a deep breath and tried to make her voice sound calm. "I need to take care of something." Claire was slightly startled and a hint of hesitation flashed in her eyes, but she finally nodded gently. Catherine looked at her reaction and sneered in her heart. She knew that Claire must have never expected that she would regain consciousness so quickly, and she didn't expect that she could deal with it so calmly as if she had changed a person. A few days later, Catherine successfully completed the discharge procedures. She did not hesitate to resign from her previous job that seemed stable but actually made her fall into endless pain. Standing at the crossroads of life, she began to replan her new life trajectory. She knew that if she wanted to successfully take revenge, she must have strong funds and abundant resources as a solid backing. So she plunged into the ocean of knowledge of investment and financial management. With the memories that were like treasures in her mind after rebirth, like a keen treasure hunter, she carefully identified and searched for potential companies and high-quality projects that were about to rise in the business wave. In this process full of challenges and opportunities, the gears of fate turned quietly and she met Tom. Chapter 2. First Encounter with Tom. It was an afternoon with particularly bright sunshine. The warm sunshine sprinkled on the earth without reservation, covering everything in the world with a layer of golden glory. Catherine attended an investment lecture with a desire for knowledge and expectations for the future. After the lecture, she was about to leave with a full harvest, when suddenly, a low and magnetic voice that seemed to penetrate the soul sounded behind her. "Catherine, wait a minute." The voice was like a bell in the middle of the night, steady and powerful. She turned around subconsciously, and what came into her eyes was a man in a black suit, walking towards her with confident steps. His eyes were as deep as an ancient deep pool, as if hiding countless unknown secrets. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, with a just right smile, and the whole person exuded a mysterious and irresistible self-confidence. "Who are you?" Catherine was full of doubts, and her tone unconsciously carried a hint of vigilance. "I'm Tom." He stretched out his hand, which was slender and powerful as if it contained endless energy. Catherine hesitated for a moment but still gently shook it. At the moment of shaking hands, she felt Tom's palm was broad and warm, conveying an inexplicable power. "I am very interested in your views on the investment potential in the emerging technology field in your lecture," Tom said while slightly turning sideways, motioning Catherine to sit down and talk in detail. "The insights are quite unique, and it doesn't seem to be based on theory alone." Catherine was shocked, but she remained calm on her face and chuckled. "It's just some daily observations and thoughts." She was secretly alert. This Tom seemed to know a lot about her. Was it a coincidence or was there another purpose? After the two sat down, Tom talked endlessly about his views on the investment market, from the transformation of traditional industries to the rise of emerging industries, and his analysis was incisive. Catherine was gradually attracted and had to admit that Tom's views were novel and forward-looking, and many of his ideas coincided with the future trends she knew after her rebirth. "You seem to have extraordinary insight into the market trend," Catherine couldn't help but say. "Do you have any special information channels?" Tom smiled mysteriously and looked at Catherine with burning eyes. "Some things, if you experience more, you will naturally see through them. I can see that you are not an ordinary person, Catherine. There is a fire in your eyes. That is the persistence of your goal." Catherine's heart trembled. She had been carefully hiding the secret of her rebirth and her determination to take revenge, but she didn't expect that Tom would see through it at a glance. She pretended to be calm and asked back, "Oh? Then what do you think my goal is?" Tom leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You want to control your own destiny and change some things that have made you painful, right?" Catherine's breathing stagnated. This Tom was too dangerous, but she felt vaguely that this danger might help her on the road to revenge. After thinking for a moment, she decided to be honest. "Yes, I do have things I want to change, and investment is one of the ways to achieve my goals." Tom leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile on his face. "Very good, I appreciate your frankness. I have some resources that may help you go more smoothly on the investment road. We can cooperate." Catherine looked up at Tom with a hint of hesitation in her eyes. She knew that cooperating with Tom might bring unexpected benefits, but it might also expose more of her secrets. However, the desire for revenge prevailed and she stretched out her hand. "I hope we have a pleasant cooperation." Since then, Catherine and Tom have met frequently. Tom introduced a lot of industry contacts to Catherine and shared some inside information. With the memory of rebirth and the resources provided by Tom, Catherine quickly gained a foothold in the investment field and made a lot of money. In the process of getting along, Catherine found that Tom's concern for her seemed to go beyond the scope of ordinary partners. One day, Tom was driving Catherine home. When the car stopped at the downstairs of the apartment building, he suddenly said, "Catherine, do you know? When I am with you, I always feel a special power. You let me see the perfect combination of tenacity and wisdom." Catherine was slightly stunned, avoiding Tom's fiery eyes, and said lightly, "I am just working hard for my future." Tom gently held Catherine's hand. "I will always be by your side, whether it is investment or other things." Catherine's heart was a little rippled. She pulled back her hand and pretended to be calm and said, "Thank you, but I am more used to relying on myself." After that, she hurriedly got out of the car, but her heartbeat accelerated involuntarily. As the funds continued to accumulate, Catherine knew that the time for revenge was getting closer. She began to use Tom's relationship to collect more information about Nate and Claire, and the revenge plan gradually took shape in her mind. Chapter 3. The revenge plan is launched. Catherine sat in a study room that was simply decorated but stylish. The desk in front of her was piled with documents, each of which was related to Nate and Claire. She frowned and carefully sorted out the clues she had obtained from Tom and her own investigation. Nate's company was facing a crisis of broken capital chain. In order to fill the loophole, he did whatever it took, even violating regulations. Claire took advantage of her position at her job to embezzle public funds to satisfy her growing material desires. Catherine sneered. These weaknesses were enough to become a breakthrough for her revenge. She first targeted Nate's company. Through the connections and influence accumulated in the investment circle, Catherine began to quietly lay out in the stock market. She joined several trusted investors to gradually sell off Nate's company's stocks to create panic. At the same time, she anonymously disclosed the financial risks and violations of Nate's company to some business media. As expected, once the news came out, Nate's company's stock price plummeted like a free fall. Stockholders panicked and sold their shares, and Nate's company was instantly in turmoil. Nate ran around looking for capital injection, but his former partners avoided him after seeing the negative news. Seeing Nate's anxious appearance, Catherine had no pity in her heart, only the pleasure of revenge. But she knew that this was only the first step, and she needed to dig deeper into his secrets to completely defeat Nate. After a hard tracking, the private detective she hired finally discovered a business fraud case that Nate had committed many years ago. In order to win an important project, Nate forged documents and deceived his partners, causing the other company to go bankrupt. This matter was suppressed by Nate with money and connections, and few people knew about it. Catherine was overjoyed and kept the evidence properly, ready to give Nate a fatal blow at a critical moment. After dealing with Nate's affairs, Catherine turned her attention to Claire. She used her expertise in the financial field to carefully review Claire's financial accounts and soon found the flaws. Claire illegally obtained a large amount of money by forging reimbursement vouchers and falsely reporting project expenses. Catherine began to collect relevant evidence. Every document and every transfer record was carefully organized by her as a weapon to deal with Claire in the future. In the process of advancing the revenge plan, Catherine did not have smooth sailing. Nate and Claire seemed to have noticed something strange and began to be on guard. Claire even took the initiative to contact Catherine to try to find out the truth. "Catherine, long time no see, how have you been recently?" Claire greeted hypocritically on the phone. Catherine held the receiver tightly, suppressed her disgust, and said calmly, "Very good, how about you?" "I've been very busy recently, there are a lot of things in the company. By the way, I heard that you are doing well in investment." Claire changed the subject and tried. "It's just a little achievement, not worth mentioning." Catherine responded calmly. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the two hung up the phone. Catherine knew that the road ahead would be more difficult, but she had no intention of retreating. She looked out the window at the bustling city with a firm look in her eyes, and silently said in her heart, "Nate, Claire, your good days are over." At this time, Tom pushed the door open and saw Catherine's tired but determined expression. He walked forward and gently held her shoulders. "Don't tire yourself too much, I will always be by your side." Catherine looked back at Tom and a warm current surged in her heart, but she still said firmly, "I must do all this myself, this is my mission." Tom nodded, his eyes full of understanding and support. "I know that no matter what decision you make, I support you. Just ask me for anything you need." Catherine took a deep breath and re-entered the preparation of the revenge plan. She knew that this battle with the betrayer had entered a white-hot stage. Chapter 4. Encounter on the cruise ship. The revenge plan was like a precision running machine, advancing in an orderly manner to the halfway point. Catherine knew that in order to completely expose Nate and Claire's ugly behavior, she had to create a perfect opportunity to put them under public scrutiny. So she carefully prepared an extremely luxurious cruise trip and sent sincere invitations to many important figures in the business world. Each of the invitees has a wide range of influence in the industry, and their every move can set off waves of business waves. When Nate and Claire received the invitation, they did not notice the turbulent undercurrent hidden behind it, and accepted it without hesitation. In their eyes, this is just an ordinary social feast, a good opportunity to expand their network and improve their business status. But they have no idea that this seemingly gorgeous cruise ship is about to become a huge turning point in their destiny. Catherine boarded the cruise ship, like an elegant queen, showing calmness and confidence in every move. She skillfully dealt with Nate and Claire, maintaining a false friendly relationship on the surface. However, deep in her heart, the flame of revenge was like being poured with fuel, burning more and more vigorously. During the cruise, Catherine quietly began to lay out her plans with her deep influence in the investment field. She quietly spread negative news about Nate's company among the crowd, and these news spread quickly among the crowd like a virus. She deliberately mentioned the financial instability of Nate's company in front of some key figures, hinting at the possible improper operations behind it. Those business elites who were intentionally guided by her began to doubt Nate's company and talked about it privately. Nate soon noticed something was wrong, and a feeling of uneasiness spread in his heart like a tide. His company was like a ship swaying in a storm. The continued decline in stock prices and the increasing doubts of partners made him feel uneasy. He began to ask around, trying to find the person behind the scenes, but he never thought that the mastermind behind all this was Catherine, who had been deeply hurt by him. One evening, the afterglow of the setting sun sprinkled on the deck, giving the whole world a golden tint. Nate's face was full of anger, and he walked straight to Catherine with a hint of anger and suspicion in his eyes and asked, "Catherine, are you hiding something from me? Recently, the company has been inexplicably entangled in all kinds of negative news, and I always feel that this matter has something to do with you." Catherine raised her head and stared at him coldly without any fear in her eyes and said calmly, "Nate, I have nothing to hide from you. But do you really think you can deceive everyone? Those dishonorable means of your business will be exposed sooner or later." Nate's face turned pale in an instant as if struck by lightning. He was keenly aware from Catherine's words that she might have known his shameful secrets, and a strong fear surged in his heart. But he still tried to pretend to be calm and threatened in a low voice. "Don't mess around, Catherine. If you dare to ruin my good deeds, I will not let you go." Catherine's mouth corners slightly raised, revealing a faint mocking smile, and said, "Nate, you'd better be careful. Otherwise you will regret it. All this is just the retribution you deserve." At the same time, Claire also felt vaguely uneasy. She noticed that Catherine's behavior was a little abnormal. She always shuttled among the crowd intentionally or unintentionally, and her eyes revealed an elusive firmness. Claire had a sense of foreboding in her heart, but she could never guess Catherine's true purpose. One afternoon, the sun shone hotly on the deck chair. Claire mustered up her courage, walked to Catherine, and said with a concerned smile on her face, "Catherine, you seem a little strange recently. Did something happen?" Catherine turned her head and looked at her coldly, her eyes like a sharp knife, piercing Claire's heart, and said, "Claire, are you guilty? Why are you starting to care about me now?" Claire's face turned pale as paper in an instant, and her lips trembled slightly, realizing that Catherine might have noticed her and Nate's betrayal. She tried to hide her inner panic and whispered, "Catherine, don't think about it, I'm just worried about you." Catherine sneered and said, "Claire, you'd better be careful. Your greed and betrayal will not end well." As the cruise continued to sail, the revenge plan was like a taut bowstring, moving towards the climax step by step. Catherine's heart was full of expectations for the upcoming victory, but she was inevitably a little nervous. She knew that this journey of revenge was full of dangers, but she had already made up her mind to carry out revenge to the end no matter how many obstacles there were ahead. "Catherine, are you really going to do this?" Tom asked softly as he stood with Catherine on the bow on a quiet night, the sea breeze gently blowing their hair. Catherine turned her head and looked at him firmly, with a resolute light flashing in her eyes, and said, "I have to do this. They betrayed me and destroyed everything I had. I can't let them get away with it. They must pay a heavy price for what they did." Tom was silent for a while, then gently held Catherine's hand, his warm palm conveying strength, and said, "I will support you no matter what happens. I will be by your side." A warm current surged in Catherine's heart. She knew that on this difficult road of revenge, Tom was her most solid support and an indispensable and important ally. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was light, but full of endless gratitude and firm determination. Chapter 5. The truth is revealed. The cruise ship continued to sail on the vast ocean, getting closer and closer to the destination, and Catherine's revenge plan also ushered in the most critical moment. Finally, on a starry night, a grand dinner was held on the cruise ship. In the banquet hall, the crystal chandeliers cast soft and bright light, reflecting the guests' gorgeous costumes and cheerful smiles. The scene was full of laughter and excitement. Catherine was dressed in a black evening dress, like an elf in the dark, elegant and mysterious. She took a deep breath and walked onto the stage steadily. The spotlight instantly focused on her, and her figure looked particularly firm under the light. The eyes of all the guests were attracted by her, and the banquet hall suddenly became quiet, and everyone was curiously waiting for what she would say next. "Everyone, I have an important thing to tell you today." Her voice was crisp and loud, echoing in the banquet hall, with a hint of coldness and determination in her eyes, slowly looking around the audience. Nate and Claire were originally chatting and laughing with the people around them. When they heard Catherine's voice, their smiles froze on their faces and their faces turned pale as paper. A strong sense of uneasiness surged in their hearts. They vaguely realized what Catherine was going to do, and their hearts were filled with fear and regret. "Catherine, don't mess around." Nate tried to lower his voice, took a few steps forward and whispered in a threatening tone. Catherine glanced at him coldly, ignored his threat and continued, "Nate, do you really think you can deceive everyone? Your greed and selfishness will eventually make you suffer the consequences." As she said, she took out a carefully prepared document from her handbag, held it high and showed it to everyone. "Everyone, this document is a record of Nate and Claire's email exchanges. From these emails, we can clearly see that they betrayed me and destroyed everything I had in order to satisfy their own selfish desires." Her voice trembled slightly with a hint of long-suppressed anger. The guests were in an uproar, whispering and talking. They couldn't believe their ears. They thought it was just an ordinary social dinner, but such a shocking secret would burst out. Nate and Claire's faces became very ugly. Their bodies trembled slightly. They tried to refute, but found that their throats seemed to be choked by something and they couldn't say a word. "What else do you have to say?" Catherine stared at Nate and Claire with a sharp gaze. "Your betrayal not only hurt me but also hurt many people who trusted you. You must be responsible for your actions." Nate and Claire were speechless. Their eyes were full of despair and helplessness. They knew that the lies and conspiracies they had carefully woven had been completely exposed, and their former glory and status were about to become a bubble. "Catherine, don't go too far." Claire finally plucked up the courage and whispered in a low voice with a hint of pleading in her voice. Catherine smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in her smile, and said, "Claire, you have brought this upon yourselves. Today is just the beginning of you paying the price for your evil deeds." With Catherine's revelation, Nate and Claire's reputation was instantly devastated. Their conspiracy was made public and everyone present looked down on them. Their business partners expressed shock and disappointment, and decided to re-examine their partnership with them. Nate and Claire seemed to have fallen from the clouds to the bottom of the valley and lost everything. "Catherine, you really did it." Tom walked up to her without knowing when, his eyes full of admiration and relief. Catherine turned around and looked at Tom with a tired but satisfied smile on her face and said, "I just did what I should do. Their betrayal made me understand that only by standing up bravely can I protect my dignity and justice." Tom gently held her hand, warm and powerful, and said, "I believe you will find your own happiness. The haze of the past has dissipated and the future will be waiting for you. Beautiful sunshine will be waiting for you." A warm current surged in Catherine's heart. She knew that in this long and arduous journey of revenge, Tom was always by her side, giving her support and strength. He is not only an important ally on her road to revenge, but also an indispensable partner in her future life. "Thank you," she said softly with tears flashing in her eyes, tears of joy and emotion. Chapter 6. Complete Destruction. Catherine stood in front of the French window, overlooking the busy streets of the city, the glass of red wine in her hand glowing like a ruby under the light. Her eyes were calm and deep, and she kept thinking about how Nate and Claire panicked after the truth was revealed. The corners of her mouth could not help but slightly raise, revealing a barely perceptible sneer. The initial success of the revenge plan was like a blazing fire, burning most of the long-accumulated resentment in her heart, but she knew that it was far from enough to just discredit them. They had to completely destroy their foundation and let them taste the taste of eternal damnation, in order to truly comfort her once broken soul. She put down the wine glass and turned to the desk piled with documents. The documents on the table recorded in detail every loophole in Nate's company, every suspicious transaction, and Claire's shady financial transactions. These were her powerful weapons for revenge and the key to completely defeating the enemy. Catherine took a deep breath and threw herself into this war without gunpowder again. This time she wanted to give the enemy a fatal blow. In the field of investment, Catherine is like a cold general, commanding a precise battle. She used her extensive connections and resources accumulated in the industry to secretly unite several powerful investors who have a persistent pursuit of justice. Together they quietly sneaked into the stock market, like sharks lurking in the deep sea, aiming directly at Nate's shares. Every acquisition action was carefully planned and the timing was just right. They cleverly avoided the vigilance of Nate and his team and gradually eroded Nate's shares. Finally, on a seemingly ordinary but turbulent trading day, Catherine and her allies launched a general offensive. They also sold a large number of Nate's shares in their hands, which instantly set off a storm in the stock market. The stock price plummeted like a free fall, and panic spread rapidly, infecting every investor like a virus. Shareholders who had a glimmer of hope for Nate's company were caught in a frenzy of selling under this sudden impact. Nate's company was in a desperate situation in an instant, with its capital chain broken, business stagnant, partners withdrawing their capital, and the company in chaos. Nate was like a trapped beast in the office, roaring wildly, trying to save his collapsing business empire. He ran around begging his former partners to lend a hand, visiting potential investors one after another, but his embarrassed appearance and his already notorious reputation made everyone avoid him. Those who once surrounded him and flattered him were now scattered. He watched the company's stock price plummet, and the despair in his heart was like a surging tide, completely drowning him. He knew that everything he had worked hard for would be gone, and all this was the painful price he paid for betraying Catherine. At the same time, Claire was also paying a heavy price for her greed and betrayal. The evidence that Catherine carefully collected was like a heavy bomb, completely exposing Claire's corruption in the company. After learning about this, the company's senior management was furious and fired her without hesitation. Claire, who lost her job, not only faced a huge economic crisis, but also fell into deep self-blame and regret. Her former luxurious life was instantly shattered, and those expensive brand-name bags and jewelry have now become witnesses of her greed. She tried to ask for help from people around her, but her selfishness and betrayal had already made her alienated, and no one was willing to help her again. Catherine watched Nate and Claire fall into despair, and the fire of revenge in her heart finally gradually extinguished, replaced by an unprecedented sense of relief. She stood on a high building overlooking the city as if she saw the betrayed and hurt herself. And now she finally made the betrayer pay the price he deserved, and all the pain and humiliation she had suffered were repaid at this moment. She felt a sense of relief from the depths of her soul, as if she had unloaded a heavy yoke, and the haze that had accumulated in her heart for many years completely dissipated. "Catherine, you really did it." Tom walked behind her without knowing when, gently held her hand, his voice full of relief and appreciation. Catherine turned around, looked at Tom with a firm light in her eyes and said, "I just did what I should do. Their betrayal made me grow up and also made me know how to cherish everything I have now." Tom hugged her tightly, feeling her warmth and strength, and said, "I am proud of you. Now everything is over and you can start a new life." Catherine leaned in Tom's arms, her heart full of gratitude and happiness. She knew that in this long and arduous journey of revenge, Tom has always been her most solid support and a beacon for her to move forward in the darkness. Chapter 7. A New Beginning. The sun shines through the thin curtains and gently falls on Catherine's face. She slowly opens her eyes and feels the beauty and tranquility of a new day. This time she slept very peacefully without the nightmares of the past and the torment of hatred. She stretched herself, her face filled with a happy smile as if she was reborn, full of expectations for the future. Tom had already been busy in the kitchen, and the aroma of fried eggs filled the whole room. Catherine, wearing loose pajamas, walked barefoot to the kitchen door and looked at Tom's back quietly. At this moment her heart was full of warmth and sweetness. The pain and suffering of the past had become distant memories. The man in front of her gave her the courage and strength to live again. "Good morning, dear." Tom turned his head and saw Catherine with a bright smile on his face. "Come and try the breakfast I made." Catherine walked to the dining table and sat down. Looking at the exquisite breakfast on the table, her heart was full of emotion. She gently held Tom's hand and said, "Thank you, Tom. I am really happy to have you by my side." Tom gently stroked her hair and said, "I am also lucky to meet you. The past is over. From now on we will create a beautiful future for us together." After breakfast they walked out of the house hand in hand and came to the beach. The sea breeze gently blew their hair, bringing the unique breath of the sea. The waves beat against the beach, making pleasant sounds as if singing for their happiness. Catherine closed her eyes, took a deep breath and felt all the beauty. She knew that she had finally let go of the hatred of the past and ushered in a new life. "Catherine, look." Tom pointed to the sea level in the distance, where a red sun was slowly rising, dyeing the sky a brilliant red. Catherine opened her eyes and looked at the beautiful scenery in front of her, her heart full of hope. She turned her head, looked at Tom and said, "This is like our future, full of infinite possibilities." Tom smiled and nodded, saying, "Yes, let's work together to make the future better." They walked along the beach, leaving a string of footprints. Occasionally, Catherine would stop, pick up a shell and look at it carefully as if admiring a precious treasure. Tom looked at her quietly on the side, his eyes full of love. At this moment, time seemed to stand still, and the whole world seemed to be left with only the two of them. "Catherine, do you believe in fate?" Tom suddenly asked. Catherine thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "I believe that fate is in our own hands. Although the past experience made me miserable, it also made me stronger. Now I believe that we can create our own beautiful destiny." Tom gently held her hand and said, "I believe it too. No matter what we encounter in the future, we will face it together." They continued to move forward. The road ahead was still long, full of unknowns and challenges, but they held hands and stood shoulder to shoulder with courage and confidence in their hearts. They knew that they had bid farewell to the haze of the past and ushered in a new beginning full of hope. In the days to come, they will experience laughter and tears together and create their own happy story together.